Today, we're making a breakfast banh mi, a classic Vietnamese sandwich filled with chua, scrambled eggs, and all the fixings. This banh mi is inspired by one of my favorite Vietnamese restaurants in Seattle, Billard Hoang or Billard Hoang. And you heard that right, because Billard Hoang is a pool hall that's slinging some of the best Vietnamese food in Seattle. Their sandwiches are top notch, and my recipe is an homage to theirs. And we're gonna be making almost everything from scratch today. Alright y'all, remember to wash your hands. Then the first thing we'll make is our pickled veg or do chua. We'll start by peeling our daikon and carrots, and look at how massive this carrot is though. And then when they're both peeled, we'll cut these into matchstick pieces. You can also use a box grater instead to make it easier, but I like the crunch of these bigger cuts. When our carrots and daikon are all cut up, we'll toss them in some kosher salt to draw out the moisture, and we'll let them sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then our pickling liquid is just equal parts sugar, vinegar, and water. We're gonna heat this up slightly, just enough for the sugar to fully dissolve. We'll let this cool down before adding to our veg. Once our carrots and daikon are pliable like this, they're good to go. We'll rinse them off in some cold water, get them into a container, add our pickling liquid, and store in the fridge. And in a few hours, you have your very own homemade do chua. While our do chua is vibing out in the fridge, we'll make some Vietnamese butter because no banh mi is complete without it. Now, the name of this spread is a little bit controversial because the direct translation for it is butter. But since there's no dairy in it, it's not quite butter. And some folks call it mayo, and the texture and flavor is pretty similar, but since there's no vinegar, it's not quite that either. Then there's the camp that calls this an aioli, but aiolis require garlic, so we're just short of that as well. Now, I've also heard some folks call this an egg sauce, and that might be the most apt because the spread really is just egg yolks, oil, and salt. To a container or mixing bowl, we'll add in 5 egg yolks. We'll get that whisked up until it's smooth, and then I'll slowly drizzle in about a cup of oil and continue to whisk. I'm just using vegetable oil today, and you can use any type of neutral oil for this. We'll continue to whisk until it thickens to your desired consistency, and then we'll just season this with a pinch of salt. And the butter is just that simple. And if you like this recipe and you want to learn how to make more of your favorite Vietnamese and Asian dishes, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications to stay up to date on all my latest posts. Then we'll move on and get the rest of our ingredients prepped. For my cilantro, I'm just gonna get that washed, and I like soaking this in some cold water in a mixing bowl, moving it around to loosen up any sediment or dirt, and I'll repeat this 2 or 3 times, then rinse off and let dry in the colander. Then I'll just cut off the woodsy stem part of the cilantro. Moving on, I have some English cucumbers that I'll just slice up. And typically I do prefer Persian cucumbers, but the ones at the grocery store today didn't look particularly fresh, so these English ones are a good substitute. Then the only things we're not making from scratch today is the chua and the baguette itself. For the Vietnamese ham, I'll have a recipe to make it at home down the line, but this is meant to be a quick and easy recipe, so we'll just use the store-bought version today. We'll cut this in half the hot dog way, and then slice up into thin half moons and put that to the side. Then the last thing we have to do is scramble our eggs. I'm gonna whisk up a few eggs and season that with a touch of fish sauce. Then to a hot pan, I'll add in some oil, add and quickly scramble, and this literally takes 10 seconds to cook. And I'll just finish that up by mixing in a knob of butter. And then it's time to assemble our breakfast banh mi. This is a baguette that I picked up from my favorite deli in Seattle that makes their bread fresh daily. Make sure you check out Tansa and Tofu in Chinatown. To the baguette, we'll add a smear of our bơ. We'll towel our jalua onto the baguette. We'll add our scrambled eggs on top of that. And then instead of jalapenos, Billard Hoang uses sambal or a garlic chili sauce instead, so we'll add some of that. Then we'll add in our sliced cucumbers, our pickled veggies that we made earlier. We'll add some of our cilantro. And the finishing touch to our breakfast banh mi is some Maggi, which is absolutely crucial, and some black pepper. We'll cut that in half and peep that cross section. And just like that, you've made your very own breakfast banh mi at home. As always, the full recipe and measurements are on my blog at feedthepudge.com. Now, if you're Vietnamese and lived in South Seattle, you know that Billard Hoang is the spot. Now, I've been coming here since I was a little kid, and back then it was a little rough around the edges. So before they made it illegal to smoke cigarettes inside the restaurant, this was the hot spot for all the uncles to come play pool, drink Heinekens, and smoke with their friends. My older brother Timmy used to take me here when he kicked it with his friends, and I can still vividly remember the billowing clouds of smoke that settled just above my head every time I walked into the restaurant. Now, I hated the smell of smoke and I would always complain, so my brother would appease me by getting me a banh mi and avocado smoothie. And while all the secondhand smoke definitely sucked, the trade-off made it worthwhile. That was probably over 20 years ago at this point, and they're still serving up some of the best Vietnamese food now. However, they did remodel, made it way less intimidating and way more approachable for anybody to come in and eat. They're a much more food-forward establishment today than they were back then, but it hasn't lost any of its appeal. If you're in the area, you should definitely stop by. And if you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy.